talking about, positioning themselves versus credit card companies, loyalty programs, that is still something that BNPL services lack, that credit card companies do provide, and why hopefully, they'll probably step up their game in that aspect with offering rewards to entice people to sign up in the future.
Hey gang, it's Thursday, July 29th. Nazmul, Oscar and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by VTEX. I'm Marcus and today I'm joined by two people. But first of all, we have one of our forecasting analysts, it's Nazmul Islam.
Glad to be here.
Hey buddy, thanks so much for hanging out. We're also joined by one of our directors of forecasting, it's Oscar Orozco.
Thanks for having me, Marcus.
Hey chap, so gents, today's fact, you can perform the Heimlich maneuver on yourself. If you're ever alone and find yourself choking on a piece of food, don't panic. First, form a fist with your dominant hand and you push it under your rib cage and above your belly button with the other hand flat on top. And then you forcefully push your fist in and up repeatedly until the item in your throat comes loose. If that doesn't work, you can try doing the same thing if you bend forward over a chair. That allows extra pressure to your hand. It's from the US National Library of Medicine. That's what they recommend. I feel like maybe I shouldn't be giving out medical advice.
Probably not. That also sounds so painful.
Sounds very painful.
It does, but if you're choking, I wish I'd known this last week. There was about 4 or 5 seconds last week when I was choking on something where I couldn't breathe in, and I was actually really quite scary. So this information would have been really helpful. Luckily, my mum was there, and she might have saved my life. Yeah, but maybe don't do this on yourself, actually. I shouldn't be giving out this kind of advice. Look it up for yourself, okay? I can't be responsible for that. It's too much pressure. Anyway, today's real topic, some new forecast metrics that help us predict the future. So we are talking about all the brand new forecasting metrics that our team has been working on in Q2. They're constantly updating thousands of metrics from total ad spending to time spent with media to social networking, covering how many countries do you guys cover?
I think for internet users, we might have in the 30s to 40 different markets almost at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. But it depends on the metric.
Right. It depends on the metric indeed. But yeah, we've got metrics that do cover good portions of the country, some within the US, very, very detailed indeed, some of those major markets that we cover. As well as updating existing ones, they also add new ones each quarter. And 3 of those new metrics that we've picked to talk about today are social buyers, buy now, pay later users, and China live streaming social commerce sales and buyers. So we're going to start with Nazmul. He's going to tell us what social buyers means, which companies he broke out, and then give us a couple of reasons why this metric was really interesting to research. So Nazmul, social buyers, what are they and what companies did you break out?
So when we talk about social buyers, we're specifically looking at people who are at least 14 years old and have made a purchase within the last year on either the social platform itself, either through checkout options on there like Instagram checkout, or by clicking through a link that gets into a retailer site and they made their purchase immediately right after. And the companies we currently have for our social buyer platforms are Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest.
Okay. And so wait, so you said it goes through a link and then buys the thing immediately. So if you go on social media, you're on Instagram, you go through a link to someone's site and you buy the thing, that still counts.
Yep.
Okay, got it. And what interesting findings did you find from researching social buyers?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things that caught my attention was that Facebook is actually so high. For Facebook social buyers, we already have it in 2021 over a quarter of all digital buyers in the US. And so that metric is within the year. So take that with a grain of salt that it's not happening, frequently. But as long as someone made a purchase within that year, they'll be counted. But the interesting fact about it is that, so you're thinking that maybe Facebook Shops or a bunch of their other mergers with Shopify and things like that might be causing a lot of people to go on Facebook and buy right there. But actually, we think a lot of those purchases are happening through links. So advertisements, people posting links on their profiles, stuff like that. That seems to be driving a lot of traffic through Facebook to retail e-commerce sites. And then another, on the other side of that is that Pinterest, which I think a lot of people already kind of think of Pinterest as a quasi social network, but also like an e-commerce site, because a lot of people already go there for inspiration and things like that when they're planning out events. But really, it only represented just above 6% of digital buyers in 2021. I mean, obviously, still has a lot of room for growth. it grew 16% in 2021. But yeah, I just thought, going into the forecast, it might be a little higher.
Yes. So Facebook had the highest share of social buyers and Pinterest the least of the three you broke out?
Yep.
Okay. I noticed that after 2022, the social buyer penetration number as a share of population, so social buyers as a percentage of the population, really flattens out. What's going on there?
Well, we think that a majority of the people who are going to be actively trying to buy on social media, or at least clicked on a link or trust the link through social media enough to make a purchase on it, are going to be at least making one purchase within the year by that point. I mean, obviously, things change over time. More people could get comfortable with it, and we could see that number explode if something happens in 2022 and 2023. But at the moment, we're thinking a lot of people who are going to make a purchase on social media are already on those platforms and actively doing so.
Right. And we should say that this is social buyers, right? Shoppers would be different, would be browsing, and we expect a lot more people to shop on social.
Yep, that is correct.
Okay. And if you look at it, I mean, that's as a share of the population, which may be a bit unfair. If you look at social buyers as a share of digital buyers, it's 43%. So a lot higher when you're looking at it as a subset of digital buyers as opposed to the population. Okay, so that's social buyers. Let's move to buy now, pay later services or service users. Oscar, this is one that you worked on. Tell us what buy now, pay later even means, I guess, to begin with.
Yeah, so it's a new metric we've broken out. It's definitely a hot topic, but buy now, pay later, also we call it BNPL services. They are interest-free solutions provided by third-party payment platforms. So we're not looking at any credit or retail or bank-branded financing options. So these are third-party platforms, and they allow consumers to purchase and finance a product or a service and then pay for it kind of like in scheduled installments, more flexible type of payment options. And, we define anyone over the age of 14 who accesses one of these platforms and has made a payment toward a purchase in the past year as counting as one of these users.
Okay. So first of all, tell me how many people are using buy now, pay later BNPL services in the US this year?
So this year, we forecasted about 45 million people use the services. So it's a very high number. It comes out to about 22% of all online buyers. So not shoppers, but people who already purchase things online. And it's about 16% of the population. So it's an activity that has grown exponentially in the last few years. And so we've already seen a lot of the major growth, but it will continue to grow into the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, say exponential, you're not kidding. Over 600% growth in 2019. I mean, this was a non-existent space in 2018. A million or so people, 1 or 2 million people were using these services. Yeah. So in the last 3 years, it's exploded from a 1 to 2 million people might be fumbling around with it to a 45 million person space, which is quite remarkable. We've obviously had the pandemic, but what's driven that growth? What can we point to say that's the reason?
I mean, you mentioned the pandemic. Just like so many other activities, the digital transformation has accelerated so quickly. And so the pandemic has had a major factor in that. But again, it's, they see themselves as alternatives to credit card companies. That's who they are positioning themselves against. And so part of it is also the flexibility, the easier payment installment plans in a time of need. But also they market themselves to people who might have bad credit, to younger individuals who might not like using credit cards. So all of that has just come together and really been a sort of a boon to the market.
I mean, you talk about younger individuals, it's such huge discrepancies by age. Mm-hmm. Over 26% of millennials or Gen Z folks will use these services this year. That's compared to 4% of boomers. So 26% of young people, 4% of older people, and even going forward, 2025, 40% of those younger millennial and Gen Z people will be using BNPL services, and just 10% of boomers.
Yep.
What else jumped out to you from doing this research?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of like credit cards, and this is something for the listeners to keep in mind. BNPL services, buy now, pay later services, can be dangerous. There's a study from Credit Karma that spoke to nearly 40% of consumers who have used one have missed a payment. What it tends to lead to is to lower people's credit scores. So similar sort of, similar things that you'll see happen with credit cards, which with the high APR lead to people having, crazy debt is being seen with the BNPL industry as well. So it's an interesting alternative, but people have to be careful with them.
Yeah, definitely. What else did you find interesting about this metric?
So one thing to look forward to is the industry is still largely unregulated. So it remains to be seen whether future legislation will hinder growth and adoption. We're seeing that in certain European countries and Scandinavia where they become more regulated. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Also, talking about positioning themselves versus credit card companies, loyalty programs. That is still something that BNPL services lack that credit card companies do provide, and why hopefully they'll probably step up their game in that aspect of offering rewards to entice people to sign up in the future.
Yeah, 600% growth, as I said, in 2019. We're still expecting 81% growth this year in buy now, pay later service users. And by 2025, we're expecting 1 out of every 3 digital buyers and 1 out of 4 Americans to be using these services. Oscar, I imagine the recent announcement of Apple Pay Later is really going to fuel this. And that happened after we published these numbers, but I imagine we'll be taking that into consideration when we update them.
Yeah, we absolutely will. As well as PayPal, they just launched Pay in 4. So people can pay for something in 4 different segments. And yeah, all of this just indicates how fast growing the market is, and something we'll have to keep an eye out for.
Definitely. The final metric we wanted to talk about is China live streaming social commerce sales and buyers. It's a mouthful. There's lots going on in that sentence. Nazmur, what are we talking about here?
So for the live streaming social commerce buyers and sales, for the sales, obviously, we're including same way products and services via social sites. But this time specifically during an online video streaming where there's a presenter discussing and demonstrating the product or service in real time. So it has to be during that live streaming event. And for social buyers, again, it has to be people 14 plus and within the calendar year.
And what did you? This one was fascinating. But what for you were the 1 or 2 things that made this metric interesting when you were doing the research and breaking these numbers out?
Yeah, what stood out as crazy to me is that it seems like such a niche group. It's like you're getting social buyers, which is already an up and coming market, and you're taking an even smaller section out of it, only people buying during live streaming. So you expect the numbers to be small, but actually they're decently pretty big already. Like live streaming social e-commerce sales in China in 2021, we're expecting that to be $131 billion in USD. And then for like the user side, we're expecting 194 million people to be buying through live streaming on social commerce sites. That's just astounding to me that people are so active in it. And another interesting part about it is like the user base that are like participating in it, because we have like a new a metric too for like live streaming e-commerce sales overall in China, which we could definitely check out. But those numbers are usually driven by the big retailing sites, so like Taobao Live and other retailers in their own like live platforms. They'll just have a bunch of the big brands and retailers come in, advertise usually with some kind of influencer and things like that to get sales there. But for the social network side of live streaming, it's actually a lot of like small businesses and like local suppliers and local wholesalers, or even just like actual local farmers getting onto social media, putting up their own live stream and showing off their products. And then a lot of people in China and like the local markets outside of cities really are supporting that. They want to buy from their local communities, help support by investing into their local communities. So that's what's really driving this going forward.
Okay. The headline that jumped out to me was, as you noted in your research, over half of China's social commerce sales, will come from live streaming by the end of 2022, which is insane. Is that going to start to level out after that, Nazmur? Is live streaming just going to swallow all of social commerce sales?
Honestly, it could go either way. I can see it becoming where it's like it takes up a majority portion of it, but then it just kind of levels off because there's like social commerce is growing overall around the world, and there could be a bunch of new players in it that allow people to purchase, not through live streaming, but just by products and platforms on the site, retailer pages and profiles on there. But live streaming is becoming so popular in China, it just become the main way for people to purchase. Because I think it's just that the uniqueness where you could get your questions answered in real time. Like you see someone try on a dress and you're like, but how would that fit in, if I'm wearing like a sweater over or something like that? And you get your answer right there and then there. So it's just something that's uniquely interesting to people. And so it might become the main way people buy.
Yeah. So that's social buyers, that's buy now, pay later, and that's China live streaming social commerce sales and buyers. In Q2, our forecasting crew also published time spent with TikTok numbers, upfront CTV video ad spending, retail e-commerce sales for Lowe's, Chewy and Etsy, neobank and direct bank, digital only accounts, and much, much more. Gents, in Q3, you guys are going to be working on a ton of new metrics again. What can we expect in the coming months?
So we're looking into things like connected car drivers, as well as autonomous and AI-powered delivery assistance units like drones and vehicles. So more on the tech side. So really interesting emerging markets that hopefully we'll be able to break out some numbers for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're also looking into the payment side of things, specifically into B2B payments. It's an ever-growing market, and it's very interesting because it's so different from retail e-commerce. And one specific thing we might be able to break out in the coming months is Amazon Business and their part in that market. They're not a manufacturer and they're not a wholesaler, but they have a lot of third-party sellers on their site, and they could become the biggest marketplace for B2B buyers in the US.
You said one of Amazon's fastest growing business?
It is Amazon. This is the fastest growing business within Amazon.
Wow. All right, gents. Well, yeah, we look forward to those and much, much more from your team of forecasting analyst people. So that's all we've got time for the first half. Time now for the halftime report, where we summarize the lead story in about 30 seconds or less. Oscar, we'll start with you. What would be your key metric from the first half?
So we touched on demographics and what specific demographics are driving buy now, pay later service use. And the main thing that we estimate is 3 in 4 of current users fall either into the Gen Z or millennial category. And by 2025, it'll only dip a bit below 70%. So these are the two generations that are truly driving growth. It'll be massive if they're able to bring in baby boomers or Gen X buyers. So it remains to be seen if that'll be the case.
I think the most important thing people should be paying attention to are the live streaming social numbers. Like you mentioned yourself, live streaming social buyers and live streaming social e-commerce sales are going to be about 50% of both the sales and users in 2022 in China. And I think people in the US should really be paying attention to it too, is because live streaming has a chance to become popular over here. Instagram is thinking about testing out Instagram live shopping really soon. And if that has the same growth trajectory as what we see in China, it could really have like a big boon for Facebook.
That's it for the lead story. Time now for In Other News. First, a quick word from our sponsor, VTEX. Retail's next competitive threat may come from a business model or channel that didn't even exist a few months ago. This modern dynamic requires companies to adapt quickly, pivoting business seemingly overnight, something traditional commerce platforms just can't support. There's a new enterprise commerce platform on the rise, one that's fast, flexible, and doesn't require 9 months and $1 million to get up and running. Go to VTEX, VTEX.com/eMarketer to learn more. All right, folks, we are back today in other news. How many people watched the NBA Finals this year? An important ruling with NCAA athletes? And out-of-home ad costs are back to pre-pandemic levels. Story 1. The 2021 NBA Finals featuring the Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns averaged nearly 10 million viewers on ABC for the 6-game series, up 32% versus the 6-game 2020 NBA Finals between the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers. The closeout game, this year's Game 6, saw over 12 million people tune in. That's up 50% on 2020, which also ended in 6. Game 6 delivered the largest audience on TV in the key demographic of folks 18 to 34 since February 2021. So the largest audience on TV, setting a 25-year ratings record in Milwaukee and Phoenix as well. The 2021 NBA playoffs, overall the playoffs, not just the finals, which includes obviously the finals, averaged just over 4.3 million viewers across ABC, ESPN, and TNT, up 35% versus the 2020 playoffs. Nazmul, what did you make of the ratings?
Well, first thing for the comparisons to last year, I don't think it's completely fair because 2020 was a really strange time. We had basketball in a very weird part of the year, and it was not in the format that everyone was used to being played in, like pretty much an open gym with no fans and stuff like that. So it might have turned a couple of people off. But still, I'm happy that there's growing back. It's kind of returning to pre-pandemic levels. And it also shows, against what some people were expecting, some analysts and other, let's just say, fans were worried that the ratings might drop off because there's no big city teams like the Lakers involved in the finals. But we show that people are still interested in seeing good basketball.
Yeah, we did indeed. The first 5 games of the NBA Finals drew higher ratings than any other programs on broadcast TV in early July, beating America's Got Talent, the MLB All-Star Game, and 60 Minutes. Nielsen was saying that the Bucks defeated the Suns to win their first NBA title in 50 years. It was a bit of a landmark moment for the NBA, particularly for the Bucks. This year's 10 million people who watched the finals was still behind pre-pandemic levels. In 2019, 15 million folks reportedly tuned in. The year before it was 18. The year before that it was 20. The year before that it was 20 as well. Some of this is to be expected. I mean, Nazmul, you mentioned kind of weird year last year. Also this year, Joe Walsh, breaking news reporter of Forbes, noted that the Super Bowl posted the smallest audience since 2007. Earlier this year, and the MLB experienced its lowest rated World Series in history. However, iSpot TV does note the NBA national TV ad spend bounced back, set to cross the $500 million mark. Story 2. As The Economist notes, American college sports are very lucrative. It's a very lucrative business, pulling in $19 billion in 2019. That's up 65% from a decade earlier. Prominent coaches and athletic directors, the article notes, can get 7-figure salaries. Universities receive millions of dollars from TV and apparel sales, but the players receive no compensation beyond their scholarships. That's because the NCAA says athletes are amateurs and hence ineligible for compensation beyond having their tuition, room, and board paid for. However, the Supreme Court just recently ruled last month that the NCAA can't stop students from profiting off their name, image, or likeness, so college athletes are now able to strike brand deals and sponsorships for the first time. Diabia Walker notes some examples in Adweek. LSU, Louisiana State gymnast Olivia Dunn, who has more followers than other active NCAA athletes on Instagram and TikTok, could rake in over $1 million in partnerships. And also MMA Gym American Top Team is offering $500 a month to any Miami football players who endorse the brand. Oscar, your thoughts on this big change?
I mean, I think it was about time. I think it's the right ruling. Just it was a system that was archaic in many ways. If you look at, you gave some examples already, but Louisville, the University of Louisville, they generated $45 million a year. The 13 scholarships they give out to their basketball players adds up to $400,000. Something just doesn't add up. Yeah, and I think, these student athletes are getting an education, but I don't think that compensation is enough. They are both giving time and effort, putting their body through injuries to help sustain these really profitable institutions. And I think it makes sense for them to have avenues to perhaps make some money off their image or their popularity.
Yeah. A few other examples that the article points to. Auburn University football quarterback Bo Nix signed a deal with Alabama-based Sweet Tea brand Milo's, and 3 football players from LSU, Oklahoma, and Ohio State signed ambassador brand deals with Louisiana-based fast food chain Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers. Miss Walker from the article, she does note that so far big brands are watching from afar. These early deals, particularly the first day of eligibility, were mostly with smaller regional or startup brands. But George King, CFO for athlete branding consulting firm Alumni Pros Global Sports, told Adweek, you don't want to damage your big brand by doing an NIL, a name, image, likeness deal, when you don't know the lay of the land on the NIL. There's still a lot of fragmentation across the country as universities across the country establish new rules in the space. Story 3. Out-of-home ad costs are back to pre-pandemic levels as marketers race to reach people emerging from their COVID bubbles. Right staff writer Elise Lafrane of Ad Age. This comes despite reduced foot traffic due to hybrid work schedules and concern over coronavirus variants. Brian Rappaport, CEO of out-of-home agency Quan Media Group, says that during the pandemic, he got a Times Square screen for 10% of its normal cost. Those days are gone. Out-of-home suppliers like Clear Channel, Outdoor, and Outfront Media know that inventory is tight and prices are back. Outfront Media say they're starting to sell out of brand train inventory, $350,000 for 4 weeks as full coverage on the nearly 600 subway cars in New York. Nazmul, what do we expect to see from out-of-home advertising this year?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the prices keep increasing because all these companies, like you mentioned, Clear Channel, Outdoor Front, they have a lot of money that they lost during the pandemic. They had to cut back on advertising. People were not interested when people are being stuck at home because of quarantine and things like that. But now the market becoming a little bit more normal. Hopefully COVID Delta variant doesn't get worse, but people going back outside, at least in the summertime, a lot more foot traffic everywhere and across. They're trying to make that money back. And like you mentioned, inventory is selling out. People are interested, especially in these high traffic areas and in transit locations. So I would expect the prices to even increase even higher.
Mm-hmm. And I would just add that digital out of home already had so much momentum before the pandemic. It was providing high ROI. I think marketers were excited to explore, different types of campaigns. So it makes sense to me that with the rebound, they're kind of shifting some budgets right back to there. It's a new and hot channel. And so that also is a major driver for out of home in general.
Yeah, an excellent point. Digital will grow 37% this year versus the 15% of out of home in general. So digital growing 37% this year, digital out of home accounting for 31% of all out of home ad spend this year, going to 42% from 31 to 42 over the next 4 years. Miss Lefrain of Ad Age was noting that as foot traffic picks up, brands want to be in place in September when many companies want employees back in the office, at least in part. Kids go back to school to some degree and the NFL and NBA seasons start up again. But we estimate that, as I mentioned, that overall out-of-home ad spending in the US won't reach pre-pandemic levels by 2025, despite growing 15% this year and single digits going forward. That's all we've got time for. Thank you so much to my guests. Thank you to Nazmul.
Glad to be here as always.
Thank you, Oscar.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, and thank you to everyone listening. Thank you to Victoria, who edits the show. Today, July 29th, Thursday, you can check out our Meet the Analyst video, where our Nicole Perrin and Eric Hagstrom talk to Criteo about retail media and what advertisers need to know. The link is below in the show notes. We'll see you guys tomorrow for the Behind the Numbers Weekly Listen, an eMarketer podcast made possible by VTEX.